Well, it tells me that I'm live. So here we go. We will, first thing I'm going to do is try and figure out if we've got people actually tuned in and if people can actually see what's going on and what's being said. And therefore, I'm going to ask for people to throw something in the comments. I'll try and keep an eye on the comments. And if somebody who is tuned in, if you can hear me, if the sound's good, I don't know what sort of kind of delay we might have on it from what I'm saying to what you actually get. So as soon as you hear me sort of like asking if you can throw something in the comments, if somebody can, that'd be great. I have got Cody and Brennan in the green room. They're currently backstage waiting to come on. We've just had a brief chat. Perfect, Mr. Brightside's there with I can hear you. So hopefully it's not too bad then. I think that's maybe around about a 20-second, 30-second delay. I think we can live with that. So welcome everybody. This is our first Geeks Ecosystem live YouTube stream. It's going to be very difficult. I'm going to spend a lot of time looking down at my computer screen instead of looking at the camera. I'm kind of new to this as well. A lot of you may or may not know me. My name's in the bottom corner, Alpha Geeks. I've been around the ecosystem for quite a while now. I've volunteered my services purely as a community member that's bullish as fuck on this whole ecosystem to say that I would come on and do some YouTube streaming. So this is new for me. Never really done it before. My first rodeo, so to speak, certainly hosting something. I did do a brief little bit in some old stuff I was in where I was invited on somebody else's stream, but my first one hosting. So we're going to see how it goes and hopefully it'll go smoothly. Like I said, I've got Cody and Brennan currently in the green room backstage. I've just had a quick chat with them before we went live. I'm going to invite them on in a second. Everyone's going to introduce themselves. The amount of viewers that we get, I'm not sure. Most people probably already know who they are, know the backstory, but hopefully once this recording's done, it's going to flood out to more and more people. If anybody can, rather than me mess around going off here, if anyone can share the link to the live stream into the main ecosystem chat and Telegram, if people want to go and share it out on Twitter and places like that as well, just post the link, tell people that we're live now and that we're about to start talking to the devs. That'd be fantastic. And I think without further ado, we will invite the guys into the chat. So here we go. First bringing up Cody, and here we go with Brennan. Welcome guys to the chat. Thanks for joining us.
Glad to be here.
Yeah, thanks, man.
It's going to be fun. It's going to be fun. Well, hopefully it's going to be fun. It's going to go smoothly. Just had a chat with everybody, and it looks like we're maybe looking at around about a 30-second delay, which isn't too bad. We can live with that. So, like I said, I've just given a dead brief bit of background to myself, but nobody's really interested in me. It's all about you guys and getting news on here. So let me play around with some of these other things. That's better.
I'd say don't undersell your position in this, man. Like, you've been a part of this for 18, 20.
It's got to be at least that now, isn't it?
Like 21 months now. Like at least 21 months. Like you've been a part of this whole thing that we've had going on. So I think it's about 75% of the entire lifespan, if not more. 75 to 80%.
I mean, I was certainly there at the back in that other ecosystem. I don't even know if we want to mention its name on this live stream. Give them any credit whatsoever.
Blockchain 18159.
Yeah, let's just keep it like that. So just let me do me a favor. I've got my Telegram open on my desktop and it's pinging away like crazy. So I'm just going to close that down. Right. Yeah, the old blockchain. What was it? 1859 or something. Like I said, distant memories. We don't care about that anymore. But it is kind of what brought us all together anyway.
Oh, we'll talk about it on this stream for sure.
Yeah, 100%. Because the thing is, you've got one thing I've learned from my crypto journey. Before we move on to you guys, just for anybody who may or may not be interested, dead quick bit of background for myself. I've been in the crypto space for maybe about 2.5, 3 years now. Jumped into various things, aped into various things, lost loads of money, learnt the hard way, and soon realised that the one thing that you struggle to find in this space is people you can trust. I've been burnt badly. I ended up getting involved in some of my own projects. I thought that'd be a way to go, and then to find out that the people I'd got involved with couldn't trust them either. And the one thing that I have found is that you guys and this ecosystem, like you said, been around for nearly 2 years now with you guys, and I have got nothing but trust in what you do, especially the amount of transparency that's involved in it, which is why I'm doing exactly what I'm doing now, willing to put myself out there and start doing a bit of streaming and stuff. We'll see where it goes. I don't have a big following, but everyone's got to start somewhere, and I'll certainly be interested in doing more of this, and I'm going to try and see if we can get invited on other people's channels and things like that. So that's just a brief bit of background about me. Whilst I'm going to ask Cody to introduce himself now, whilst he's chatting away and stuff like that, if people are watching and you've got any questions, comments, anything like that at all, stick them in the comments. I'm keeping an eye on them. We can bring your comments up on screen. We can post questions to the devs and stuff. And also, for the few, there's around about 7 people just tuned in at the moment. If anyone can just go and hit the like on this, subscribe to the channel, do all of that usual type of stuff, that's going to help build our viewing. It helps with the algorithm, gets more people to see us, and that's ultimately what we all want. We need people to realize what this ecosystem is all about, and that's why we're doing what we're doing. So without further ado, over to you, Cody. Can you give us a bit of background about who the hell you are and how this has all come about?
Yeah, absolutely. So yes, my real life name is Cody. In the blockchain space, I'm known as Chef or Geeks. I found crypto 4.5 years ago now. It was my roommate at the time had asked me if I'd ever heard of Chainlink, which proceeded to have a cascade of investments that went on for about 2.5 years, until I eventually just got so curious about how the hell people were finding the projects on centralized exchanges before they got listed on the exchanges. And so then I went and did a bunch of searching around, and then found out that you could buy into like pre-sales before they went live, before they were even on these types of platforms. So I invested in my first pre-sale, bought a bunch of NFTs. And then there was an investor in that project that was like, hey, like there's a bunch of these dogs. They're really cool. You feed them the tokens and they burn the tokens. You should come and check it out. And so this was just over 2 years ago now. It was early September of 2022 when I was told about these dogs. And if anybody is listening to this, it actually is the same dogs that you guys own right now that are Geeks Delivery Pups that are those same dogs. And so what we'll paint a picture of over the next little bit, I'll give Brennan a chance to introduce himself first. But is just 2 guys that just had something that they believed in and then just didn't give up on it. Is really what this has been, and then just like trying to keep a strong community together, and then trying to do some cool things along the way. So that was it there. I joined the development team that Brennan was on. And then, as I don't want to give too much more away after that, because then we'll get into it. But the gist is that the next 2 years after I invested in the project, I ended up working hand in hand with Brennan as a strong development team in the Web3 space, and then we built about 50 plus different deliverables for more than 20 different projects. So we've had a hand in a lot of different things that people have used in the space. We had over $1 million in ETH go through our smart contracts. To more than 4,000 different wallets, and so we've been a big part of like asset distribution on the blockchain, and using this as a way of more of the like information storage on the blockchain, and asset distribution is what I would say the 2 things that we have become. I would consider us experts in the blockchain space, and everything that I've learned about was a combination of things directly from Brennan for how things work. And then I was fortunate to have also gone through culinary school, which is where I had my background, and then went through a really good university here in Canada. It was second best university in Canada. I went to for 6 years. So I did my bachelor's degree there, and then finished up my master's degree in land and food systems. And so this like integrated systems is kind of what I had spent 6 years studying. And so for anybody that has seen the interconnectivity of what's going on inside of Geeks, like it's just a little bit of insight into how my brain works for connecting those kind of things together. So that's just a bit about me. So that background had come in handy quite a bit when we were working on smart contracts. A lot of the times, like there was some, super tricky math that we had needed to get into. There was, how are we thinking about this, conceptualizing this? And so a lot of the times, like Brennan's hands were just a vehicle for thoughts in my brain. And so that went on for quite a while. And then, I learned enough from him to then be able to start to make some things happen on our own. But yeah, I think the man, the myth, and the legend who's behind most of this, that most of the people on this call are actually not that familiar with, I would say, in terms of the whole thing, is the person that I'll hand it off to next. So,
sounds good. Hey. Cheers, Cody. Right, here we go then, Brennan. You're up.
Hey.
Give us a background.
Hey. Yeah, I'm Brennan. Started my crypto journey. Actually, I started in 2009 mining Bitcoin. And then moved out of my parents' house. My brother then wiped the hard drive, and I lost about 25 Bitcoin at the time. So that was kind of depressing. Went back to do automotive programming and automotive high performance stuff, and then landed myself in a medical issue and went into crypto. I started buying assets and that kind of stuff, and ended up getting rugged. And it was that moment in my life that I went, I got to figure out how this works. And spent day in, day out. It became an obsession, honestly. And yeah, just stuck the nose to the ground, started building, started learning. And here we are, 7 years later. And yeah, no, love what we do. We work our butts off. The ethics piece that we bring to the table is the number one thing, which a lot of this space seems to be missing. But yeah, no, Code and I are like brothers. We've met up numerous times, had discussions, had disagreements and arguments, and the whole brotherhood relationship that you have, but it's one of those things that together we push each other further, and that's what's most important, right? We both believe that if we're sitting in our comfort zone, we're not moving forward. And so it's just that continuation of that growth. And yeah, so I'm happy to have met him, happy to be here, love what we do. And yeah, dude's hella smart. And the comment of the bridge from his thoughts to my hands, that's more than a statement. That's one of those things we've sat down and yeah, just build, just have fun and get things executed. And you guys can see that within the ecosystem. And yeah, it's beautiful.
It certainly is. And like I say, I mean, I don't know whether I speak for a lot of people, but it's complicated. I've not intently read through the entire white paper, which might find surprising, but I find that things like this that we're about to go into sometimes sits better with me rather than trying to read and read and read. And hopefully that's going to help a lot of other people out there as well. But to try and just understand it sometimes can be a bit like mind-blowing to a lot of people. But for you guys to think it and then not only know what you want to build, but then find a way to actually make it happen, like you just touched on before there, some of the complicated maths that's involved in the background. I think a lot of the time people don't realize, and they just take that for granted. There must be so much goes into it that we literally just don't realize. But I think it'd be great to get a bit of an overview of what it is that's actually been created, how things are going so far. Obviously we launched on Base and BSC just over a month ago now, and we've got the ETH launch coming up in 8 days now. 8 days, crikey, that's going quick. So yeah, I don't know if you want to field that, Cody. I don't know if you want to sort of like give a bit of a thing to where we're at now currently, or how we got to where we're at, and give a bit of an overview.
Yeah, I really think that it's how to put this, like there's tons of content out there about a white paper walkthrough. There's a ton of content out there about me explaining like different aspects and facets of the ecosystem. I can get into all of those things again, no problem. But I think that one of the things that people might find incredibly interesting is how many things along our multi-year journey have been like kept and retained, because If I actually think about what Geeks Ecosystem is, like it's pretty much this pot that I've had on the back of the stove that's been simmering for over 2 years. And I just continue adding new stuff into it, like as like other kind of like side recipes kind of get finished up. You know, it's like, oh, like this is really cool. Like, let's add that. This is really cool. Let's add that. You know, and so I think that to actually understand like how all of the pieces came to be in the way that they are, you know, the journey that Brennan and I went on over the first, you know, I said 25 months now that we've known each other actually does describe how Geeks Ecosystem came to be and what it is and the problems that we identified at certain points along the way. You know, so I think that one of the things that would be the most important thing to start with in the true origin of Geeks Ecosystem would actually be Brennan's core concept for why he started Developers United. So there's some folks in the chat that are listening right now that might not know what Developers United is or was. And so I think that Brennan should take over that and tell the story of how Brennan Developers United was founded, what the goal and the mission was, you know, and then kind of what happened.
Sounds good. I'm interested to find that and find this out.
It's changed so many times. No, I'm kidding. Now, if I got this right, and I think back all the way to, you know, so much has happened in the last 2 years, you know, the journeys that we've been on. But yeah, you know, when you look back at the core foundation, you know, DU was one of those things that I sat down at the table and I was looking at building like a connection for people that were actually trying to do good in the space, you know, which from there it turned into, you know, helping projects that were rugged and, you know, trying to give them a second chance and, you know, actually build some actual strength behind some of this stuff. And you know, I'll be straight up honest, they all kind of went the other direction than anticipated, but it doesn't mean that, you know, we didn't actually put an effort towards it. You know, I know the one project that we did, we brought it from, I think it was like 10K market cap, maybe less than that. And we got it up to, I believe it was about $500,000 within 4 hours. And, you know, it did really well. And as we all know within the space, I wasn't really strong on the asset or aspect, you know, coming from the bull into the bear and having that knowledge sense of, you know, being exit liquidity for a lot of people. And yeah, it just kind of formed around building a community, a network of people that they can trust and having, you know, projects that are available for people to purchase and, you know, actually have a decency of knowing that they can actually go to bed at night. That's the biggest thing within this space. You know, we all see the sell-offs towards the evening times of everybody's time zone. You know, the chart goes down. Next day it may come up if it survives, right? So yeah, you know, we ended up taking over quite a few projects, did our best there, and it kind of just rolled over strictly into the development side, which is where we found our niche and we ran with it. And yeah, we have a lot of people along the way and met a lot of people. We've made our own mistakes, don't get me wrong. You know, we're human, we always do. Everybody does, period. Yeah, no, it's one of those things that it just happened by itself. You know, we started it with a mission of let's go see how this plays out. You know, we have the development experience, we have some of the connections and getting people together and ended up running a team of, oh boy, I think it was 15 people somewhere in there at one point, and they all just started pulling some side things and you know code stepped in there and we had some conversations, brought them on, and slowly they weaned out. And then one day I went to the voice call with the team and said, guys aren't pulling your weight, we're not getting anywhere, y'all are fired. And it's just been the two of us since, and you know we've done exponential things. Yeah, it was that was one of the funnest conversations I had, and I believe we actually had one other person that might even be in this phone call. You know, we brought him in as our HR person to help deal with the firing of people for a whole month.
I don't know if I equals is on the call or not, but
yeah,
so I equals I plus you know, I equals I plus one in the group has known Brennan longer than I have.
Yeah.
Was part of the original Developers United core team as the HR guy.
Yeah.
So that was it. So just to add a little more detail into what the picture that Brennan painted there, like him and the boys had done the stats that, you know, like 98, 99, whatever fucking percentage it is of projects, like rug and fail, like within the first few days. And so what they were doing before the term CTO was even a thing, like at its core, Developers United was actually like a CTO machine. Like that was what it did. Like it went to communities that there was still some life in. And in Brennan's Brennan's philosophy was that if there's a dozen people in this community that are still there and want to do something, like that's enough energy to actually be able to start something. And so at the time, there was a project that was called ShibM, which he had built some ERC 721 technology to allow for like increase. It was 10 times the amount of data storage he could get into an NFT as opposed to what a normal one could. And so the use case for this was that you could have higher quality artwork, and then you would then be able to go and produce mangas, you know, and different types of comics. And so he brought that utility to this ShibM project, and there was some community members from there. There was one that was called Bob. It was called Bank of Burn. It was just a very straightforward volumetric rewards token with USDC rewards, built a claimed app for it. You know, and then, but as everyone knows, when there's no volume, the volumetric rewards don't really churn. There was another one that was called Racky G. He built a first-person play-to-burn shooter, which unfortunately, when the trailer got dropped, there was only 2 likes that came on it, and he said, "Fuck this! I'm not building a game for only 2 people to like the quarterly update." So that one is just sitting somewhere in a hard drive, maybe. And then the final one was this project Shibai V2. Which he created the pups that you fed the tokens to keep the pups alive. And that was kind of the first major build for Developers United at the time. And so those were kind of the 4 different projects. There was at one point, there was an expansion to 2 other ones that were called Bags. One was Bagheera and another one was called Simba, but the actual acquisition of those never fully went. And then we pushed those projects. So when I showed up in early September, like for me as an investor who's just finding DeFi, like I literally just invested in my first pre-sale, and now I'm in this token, it's 50K market cap. I'm looking around and I'm like, this is fucking awesome. You're telling me that there's a competent dev team that is supporting all 4 of these projects, and that they're going to be pushing it, they're going to be growing it, you know, they're here for it. They've added utilities to these things. Like, this is awesome. And so what I did was I just bought like a massive position in all 4 of these projects. I think it was like 20 grand or something total that I invested into these 4 projects, which is absolutely, I learned later, a no-no. Like, you don't go and invest 10% of supply of 50K market cap tokens. Like, that's just not a bright move. But for me, that was just a no-brainer move, because I'm like, these are 50K. All we got to do is get them to 5 million, and I've got millions of dollars. Like, this is awesome. Well, it's a little trickier to take a project from from that range to the top. And the funny part really is that ShibM ended up dead. It was dead before. DU revived it, died afterwards. Same for Racky G and same for Bob. And that core community that came together from those 3 projects seemed to kind of funnel into Shibai V2. Like, that's the one that actually had some life in it. And so I got wrecked. I was fully dusted on all 3 of those investments in ShibM, Racky G, and Bob. And I'm actually the one that drafted the document saying that these projects are now dead, you know, and that if anybody was in these projects and needs a refund for their investments, like, reach out to us and let us know. And they were so dead that of the 3 projects, there was only 2 investors that reached out to get a refund on them. Like, that's how done and dusted these things were. We pivoted all of our assets into Shibai V2, and we said, okay, like, there's some really cool opportunity. And so, Brennan, I think it's worth it for you to tell the story here of how you got invited to go to Blockchain 18159.
I'd rather not discuss the hellish time of my life. No, I'm kidding.
I mean, do we have to talk about? If we have to talk about it, we have to talk about it. But
we do.
Yeah, we have to. It's a crucial
story. It is absolutely the most important origin story.
Yeah. You know, I actually was brought to said person by actually someone who has some weight in the space and was like, hey, you need to take a look at this. And ended up buying it actually sub 100K market cap and invested quite heavy. And yeah, just kind of hung around in the shadows until there was a voice call, and got brought up on the voice call and had a conversation with the founder. And conversation led into a actual development partnership for the blockchain. And it was like, cool, that sounds like fun. You get the whole, what's the word I'm looking for? The whole grass is green, but it's dark brown on the other side kind of card, after finding that out later. And yeah, so we were in a position where, the one was holding, but we actually sat back from a company standpoint and said our exposure is going to be so much more effective and impactful for the dollar value that's going to cost if we go this route. And so we moved this route. Recognized and had a direct line to the actual founder, which was just a nice smooth sailing bridge for impact for the company and for our own personal projects that we were running on there and everything else. And then it all managed to take a random turn to the south, and it ended up involving some unicorns, some website taken down with unicorns on said website, and just a conundrum of I want to say, I'm just going to say it, childish activities, but it was fun. Code there managed to gather a whole whack ton of people and start a thing. He ended up having a voice call. I remember spitting out my burger because it was fucking hilarious, pardon the language. Just the conversations that were happening. And yeah, Code, touch on it, dude. You were more impactful at that point than I was. I just put my hands back and just kept working.
And still to this day, this might be up there with like the craziest time of my life. So just for the sake of conciseness, I'm not shy of saying the word. So I found Palm in late December of 2022. And when I showed up, like as somebody who was fairly new to DeFi, wasn't new to crypto, I was new to DeFi. Showing up to a 7,000 person group chat where there's, this like founder that people are treating like a demigod, who's rallying $300,000 worth of assets to create some buy wall on a centralized exchange, and then is like preparing for this, that, the next thing. There was so many things that were happening. There was so many crazy ideas that I showed up into that group chat. And if anybody that was a part of this project probably could remember this character Geeks asking questions relentlessly for hours on end as I was just trying to get my head around what this whole thing was. And so when we showed up, like we kind of scrounged our whole liquidity pool from Shiba IV2 led into about $10,000. We ended up buying $10,000 worth of Palm. And then that became our starting liquidity pool for now the project became this token called Meme AI. And so we refined the protocol that we had around this thing. And the whole goal at the time still was to have like digital pets. That was the goal, was that, you've got this digital pet, there's some volume that's turning from it. The pet goes to work, you get to stay at home, it's all fine and good. We ended up selling, I think by the time that Palm went down, there was a little over 200 of the 300 NFTs that we were planning on. Initially it was 1,000, but we were like 1,000's a lot. So let's call it a 300. And the more that I pushed into it, like the more that I just fell in love with the vibes. And I think that a lot of people here also fell in love with the vibes. That there was this little section that was kind of called the Wild West, where there was like, it was almost as though if you took ETH and you shrunk ETH down into something that's small enough that you could actually see everything that was happening in the observable universe that is ETH. Every single launch, every single dev, every single investor, everything that's happening. There's a new launch happening every few hours, because it's not a new launch happening every few seconds. It's a new launch happening every few hours. And so now like you can actually see everything that's happening. And it was just awesome. And so part of the things that we had done, because we were set up as, this development entity, was that there was projects on the blockchain. So it was this blockchain that was a blockchain for meme coins. And so there was this project called Meme Shib. That was the thing for Shib. And so we built their NFT platform. We built their website. There was one that was, they kind of evolved into something called ArbShib, and then we went and built something that was a similar platform for them. If anybody remembers, there was a project by a Jamaican man who was set up to help build toilets for impoverished Jamaicans by selling scary robot NFTs. That was weird. So we ended up doing the website for these guys. This is where we met Nyan and KP, and we ended up building the stuff for MaxChain. This was our first kind of triple staking platform where you stake the tokens and you could choose 3 different types of rewards that you wanted. That was super cool. But the thing that people would definitely know and have resonated with the most was when Roger decided to launch this project called United Meme Corp. And so the whole idea around this was just to have kind of like a flagship project on the blockchain, in addition to PalmD and PalmG and, I think it was Meme Love. I don't know. There's a whole bunch of them, But this United Meme Corp was something that I really rallied behind. And it was just fun. It was like you just sent out a bunch of supply to a bunch of exchanges. The goal was to, eventually get them listed on all the exchanges. I was drafting battle plans, like we were selling NFTs and then use the NFTs to give you points on this D app. It was just the precursor to the Shilitary came at this time. There was a D app called the Barracks. We were selecting targets. I was pre-writing the tweets for people for what they would need to go and say. We had this little side chat that we had. We were conducting missions around trying to move the price higher, and we were pooling funds together. This is the precursor for UnityBot. I was manually doing the UnityBot thing on centralized exchanges. The voting platform that we have, that came from PalmG. It was hilarious. I got this stupid idea for how.
Sorry.
I remember pitching it to you. I'm like, hey, Brennan, the wheels fell off the FedEx vehicle. I think that you can do this Q2 deliverable in a day. He's like, man, I'm not building a voting D app in a day. I'm like, no, hold on. Blah, 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 blah. Here's how to do it. And he's like, oh, fuck, that'll work. Let me just head down to Earl's. Let me just grab I think it was Earl's that you headed down to. I think you had some chicken wings and a Coke Zero.
Nope, blackened chicken sandwich.
Blackened chicken
Still
sandwich.
To this day.
Yeah. And so left, had a blackened chicken sandwich and a Coke Zero, and came back with a fully functional D app that we dropped, And then I think Roger kind of started his implosion from there. So it was just these guys, I don't know. I was just ruthlessly mocking this man at this point. All of us were. I remember hot dog emojis on every message. I called him a wiener. I remember unicorn emojis on everything that there could be.
We've already got one. There's one in the comments. There's the unicorn.
And it was just hilarious. I just remember being in a group chat with you guys and just waiting for something to come up, and started losing the handle on things. All of a sudden there was the big thing ended up happening at the end, which honestly was the initial concept for Geeks, which is that Geeks as a token is a pairing standard. And the idea for this came out of necessity when there was the threat that, Palm was going to be removed as a blockchain. And so there was actually no way to sell Palm because the Palm was going to be taken off of the exchange. So the solution that I came up with, and the move that I made that most of the people that are on this call from this era resonated with, was there was a day that I took all of my Palm, all of the Palm, and it was $25,000 worth of Palm or something at the time, and live on a call, just moved all of the Palm into UMC. And I was like, Palm is effectively dead. I'm with UMC. And at the same time, it was fucking epic. Nyan and KP are we've got max chain, like here's where we're going. And so on this blockchain that we knew was like on the verge of breaking apart, there was like Camp UMC, with Brennan and I. There was Camp Max Chain with Nyan and KP, and then there was Camp like Hardcore Palm. Like, I'm absolutely going to be getting these tokens from an airdrop on a new chain. Sure, that was the third side. And what ended up happening was the plan was to be onboarding projects to the blockchain in using UMC as the pairing standard, because we couldn't use Palm. And so we were selling the NFT collection, which was the overpass, to pay for the listing on CoinStore. Actually, it was this like small small exchange that we thought that we could get a listing on. And then we went, and then it ended up that wasn't going to become a viable option. But this idea of we can have a ERC20 standard be used as a pairing standard was the plan still. And so we kind of kept that on the UMC arc. Like, Roger was the one that launched it, but at one point he ended up sending me like $400,000 worth of these tokens, and then I had officially kind of taken it over. I guess unofficially had kind of taken it over and was running it with Brennan, and then we built the utilities and did the 2 different NFTs. And then when the exchange listing didn't go through, like, we had to make the call, and we were like, okay, like, UMC like isn't going to work. Like, we've raised money through the NFTs. And so when Palm went down, and like, Alpha, you can probably touch on this as well, because it was a thing that you jokingly told me in a call. You were like, this guy's absolutely full of shit. There's no fucking way this is happening.
Basically, yeah.
Was when Palm went down, and we sent out a message that was like, people have invested in Meme AI from Shib AI on this blockchain. Like, we will come up with a way to honor these investments. People have invested in these NFTs. We will come up with a way to honor these investments. People have invested in the Bravo NFTs and in the Alpha NFTs and in the Overpass NFTs. And like, we will come up with a way of honoring all of these investments. And then, the blockchain went down sometime in March. And then it wasn't until June that I had sent a message back to everybody, and had a full plan that was, we're going to go 1-to-1 the value of all of the NFTs that we had raised from the Overpass into the Bravo NFTs, into the Meme AI / Shib AI V2 NFTs, and the Alpha NFTs. So it was these 4 NFT collections. I gave everybody credits on them based on the Meme AI or the Meme AI holdings. We cut those 3-to-1, and then, folks would get those in the ecosystem. For every tokens they hold, they got some extra as well. And then those credits were used to then transition them into new Geeks NFTs. So I would say that somewhere is in the vicinity of, when you see the dollar value of NFTs that were sold for Geeks, I think we got 70-ish thousand. I think it was 15 and 25 and 300 for 2. No, it was about $100,000 worth of NFTs that we had converted from those other blockchains, and I had drafted this like suite of kind of animals for what it could be, created the Zookeeper package, had this Geeks token that it was going to be. And the plan was actually to launch September 2023. That was the initial plan when I was hitting everybody up in June. We were going to be launching then, And then as we got building, like, what ended up happening was that there was a bunch of other developments that we got taken on, which ended up giving us the technical aptitude to then build out the rest of the things. Like, it was almost like, okay, well, we have these things that are set up, but these things kind of need to be done first. And then, we ended up doing that big lodge raise that came around in October, November. Like, there was these other projects that we were working on, and so I think we'll touch on a lot of those concepts as well. And then ultimately, like, I had to go back to school for a few months, which was going to kind of take us into that like May time. And then it was like, okay, from May onwards, like, we are just all in on, getting the rest of this thing built up, And so there's like that time chunk in between, kind of that June to December time, is I think something that'll be the next exciting thing to illuminate. But yeah, if anybody had any questions in the chat about, things that went down at the end of that Palm time, like, feel free to let us know, because that was so crazy. Like, that was like,
yeah.
Brandon, I remember like
we were so
even sat
all in on
down.
that.
Yeah, like we actually sat down with Roger and had like a 3 hour long conversation about like actually taking over the blockchain. And then there was a bunch of back and forth and, not wanting to actually give away control, but here have the blockchain. And it's like, I can't do that. And then that's when I got absolutely pissed. And I remember sending that message, like I was livid. And yeah, then it ended up going over to Nyan and KP, and then we helped them get all set up, with the help of, Chiano and so on and so forth. But yeah, dude, like that was one of the most frustrating moments of my life within this space was that conversation, because it was, yeah, and then go behind the back, and you know how I work, and I've always worked that way. I still that old business mentality of I shake your hand, we have a deal, you can't back out, right? But this space just, yeah, I was so mad. I remember that. And yeah, but it also gave us the freedom and the weaving and dipping and diving and dodging that we've had to do with some of these proposals for us. I remember there was the one NDA that got pushed across the table for us to sign, and I just pissed myself laughing and said, "There's no way in hell, I might as well just sign you the company." Right.
Yeah.
And we've managed to navigate the chaos and not try to get caught up in a whole whack ton of stuff. And yeah, here we are. It's one of those things that we've managed to make some very good business decisions, and which has helped the overall growth of even Geeks to get us where we need to be, right? And yeah, like it was something special that day. And I can honestly say I'm proud that we didn't take it, because we would be in a completely different predicament than, where we're
Oh
in
yeah,
now.
when we turned down that one offer there from MKF.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that was wild. That was a huge one.
Mhm.
I'm also glad we didn't take that.
Yeah.
But touching on what you said before, Cody, honestly, that was where I kind of like, I'd been through my crypto journey. I'd found POM. And then when it was ETH 2.0, and then it all transitioned and everything. Then when you came along and the whole UMC thing happened, and I remember the way the chat was, and everyone was, it was fantastic. It was exciting. It was fun. And then, like you've explained, it all completely fell apart. And exactly what you just said then, at the point you were in my DMs and you reached out to me and you explained that everything was going to be honoured and that you were going to go away and you and Brennan were going to look at it all and come up with something. You're going to come back to the community. And you took the words out of my mouth. In my head, I said, well, good luck. Speak to you soon. But in the back of my head, I thought, absolutely full of shit. I don't know these guys. They've got no reason to come back and support us. This is crypto. I've learnt my lessons, and this is just going to be another one of them. So I was kind of gobsmacked 3 months later when you suddenly did reappear and honoured exactly what you said you'd done. A little bit like what Brennan just said then. It was almost like we'd had that virtual handshake, a businessman's deal, and an agreement that you were going to come back. And you actually did. And at that point, that was when I was like, yeah, take my money. Because as far as I was concerned, that's the first time in the whole crypto space I'd ever found what I was looking for. And that was people that I genuinely believed I could trust and believe in. No, there's no guarantees in this. It's not financial advice. You can't guarantee anything in this space is going to work, but you'd at least like to be able to find people that you can trust in, that they're going to do, or at least try and do what they say they're going to do. And that's what I found with you guys, which is why I then stuck around for so long and why I'm still here now doing what we're doing. So if anybody does tune into this that doesn't know the backstory, I'm not part of the team. I'm not, anything to do with this other than a community member that's been in it from the start, that knows I can trust these guys, because they've already proven to me once that they didn't run away when they had an opportunity to do so. In fact, they did the opposite, and probably at financial detriment to themselves, came back and made sure everybody got everything they were entitled to. And that's where we've then built from. So the good thing that came out of POM for me is that if it wasn't for that shit show, the lodge as we know it, which again, a lot of people may or may not know what the lodge is, But the lodge wouldn't have been formed. We wouldn't have had that core group of 40 of us that are in there that have been together now for the last 18 months as kind of the cornerstone of what's about to happen, let's say. So, yeah, my thanks to you personally for that one, because it did mean a lot at the time.
Yeah, and then that was once that got all wrapped up, like there was a series of builds that we then got pulled into. So we were wrecked. Like we were all in on Palm.
Yeah.
And this would have been kind of that like April, May time, you know, and we were like, okay, like back to the basics. Like let's increase our risk management so that way we're not, you know, getting absolutely destroyed on things. Like let's get the things that we need to kind of get this Geeks ecosystem thing going. And then in the background, like we need something that we can do for ourselves. And that's when we started doing the builds for Rough, for UnityBot, for Profit Engine, and for Link, and then Chatter Shield. Those were kind of the big five that came for us afterwards. You know, and each one of them that had come through was kind of like this first of its kind build that we had done. And it was like a big series of them. Like some of the things that we did in that time frame were just wild. Like with Rough, like we created the first like decentralized coupon system. With UnityBot, like we created this first we created this like, testnet trading environment that would actually like have a decentralized way of tracking your profitability as a trader. You know, we did this like testnet trading competition, and then we got the mechanism to work that you could then buy in groups and do that whole thing, and then work with the guys to integrate that into the bot. The big one was Profit Engine as well. It's unfortunate that went to shit from their side that they had, but in terms of like technically competent development, I mean, that was a 6,300 NFT airdrop that we did to 2,300 people that once it was done allowed for 2-cent claims and 2-cent deposits on the Binance Smart Chain network. That was nuts. Like taking 2,300 holders and transitioning them from a token into an NFT system, and then having the ability to distribute rewards to people all over the globe. Because the first time that we did it, we airdropped 6,300 NFTs. We clicked the deposit button and it said, nope. Nope, can't do it.
Like, yeah, I remember that night. That was an interesting night. It was, 2 o'clock in the morning when we did that? Yeah. It was just like, I think after we saw that issue, it was just like, I'm going to fucking bed. I'm not even going to bother looking at this code. I'll look at it tomorrow. Good night.
And I just remember, like, this was when I started being able to develop. Like, this was my first actual, from my head to my hands to built mechanism was the Profit Engine mechanism, because there was no, how did we say this, Brennan? Like, there was no like straightforward development trick that you could
there
do.
Was nothing that was in anything for, you know, when we look at the base logic of what Solidity can do and bringing in outside variables and utilizing them as like mechanisms to correct time against, you know, block time stamping, you know, was one of those things that nobody's ever done before in this space, right? And that's what you actually see within the rabbits, I believe, if that's correct.
All of them,
you know,
all of them. The rabbits.
Actually, yeah, it is all of them.
Yeah, it is all of them. The rabbits just have the most unique, the most
method around it.
Yeah. The most, just anything works.
Yeah, that was
a whole thing on its. That was a whole thing on its own.
That was conversation.
That mechanism that we came out with, the mechanism that we came up with at that time, it basically, like, I had spent so long kind of conceptualizing blockchain that at the time I was picturing like how an administrative assistant could do the least amount of work possible. I was like, if you've got a magic genie that's living inside of the blockchain, that's remembering everything that you need, and it's a bunch of filing cabinets, it needs to do as little work as possible. Like, how would you do this? And the concept that I came up with was he would probably use a notepad. And he could say, okay, I did this at this time, and then here's what things were overall at that time, and then when I need to do something again, I'll just come back to it later. And this idea is the mechanism that's inside of all of our NFTs. This is the mechanism that is inside of every staking contract that we built afterwards, except for Links, because that one was crazy. That was
interesting.
That was crazy. Like, some of the problems that we solved in that were...
Well, but we even use that methodology and that style of code is still what we used at that core foundation level, right?
Yeah.
We still utilize that stamping mechanism. We just had to make sure that we covered all of the tracker tokens that were with it, right? So instead of doing it once, we were actually doing it twice against two different methods, right? And making sure that the math was correct, right? So
yeah, that was crazy. So so we finished up that thing for Profit Engine, and then that's when we got into Link, which is where decentralized liquidity pools kind of became a thing, which was super cool concept. We ended up getting pulled in to kind of have an in between move, because their whole thing was supposed to be a social fi aspect, and so they needed something kind of as an in between move. And so what they wanted was for us to do a little bit of staking and then get into something else. And I got super passionate about this, like, decentralized liquidity protocol. And so what I ended up doing was drafting a proposal for what we could do for them. And they said, we love it. We absolutely want to do this. Let's just get this staking thing done first. And then that staking thing just like took on a mind of its own, was probably still to this day, like as a single standalone contract, the craziest contract we've built. It must be.
There's got to be, yeah, with the amount of revisions, like we'd get somewhere and then it would get revised, then we'd get to that point, then it would get revised again. And it's just like, okay, no more revisions, we're done. Like, this is where it's at and we're sticking with it, But yeah, no, it took, oh God, I know you were at it more than I was at that point, because I was dealing with some family stuff at the time. And yeah, like we were, even then, it was every single day you were probably 9 to 10, if not more hours a day. And whenever spare moment I had, like, we completely disregarded our families for that development time.
Yeah, for like
right?
It was like 3 weeks, like 10 to, I think I was 12 to 16 hours a day for like 3 weeks.
Yeah.
On this thing. And each day was like, oh, here's a new problem that we ran into this problem. Like, how do you solve this problem? And then it's a 4-hour call. Like, let's figure out how to solve this problem, and then got that done. So then we finished the build. They were like, this is absolutely incredible. Like, this is super badass. I ended up meeting with the dev in Vancouver. So that's what ended up happening was the dev of Link came to Vancouver, met with me in person for 7 hours. We shook hands on a deal for doing development work for them. And then afterwards, they ended up pulling out of the deal. So the moment that they pulled out of the deal, and then so it wasn't that they pulled out of the deal, they had a counter offer. And so we were now at a position that we had a counter offer for do this thing with them, which was going to take months and months and months of our time, or like do our own thing. And so the reason that we turned it down was to do our own thing, which our own thing was Geeks Ecosystem. Like, that was the thing. I was like, I've got this promise to these people to do Geeks. We could do this thing. It'd be super cool. No risk to us, really. There's just upside gain, some time, a thing that we can have on the other side, or we can follow through on our promises, like with this group. And so that's what we did.
I remember that phone call too. Yeah, no, that was one of those phone calls. It's like, do we go down this avenue or do we just back off, do what we told people we were going to do? We're in a position now where we're comfortable where we can do it. And it was just like, no, we're just going to do it.
Because we turned down the MKF proposal just like a month or two before that as well. Like, there was kind of like
very much so.
right? There's kind of a few like serious development proposals, kind of like 4 to 6 month development proposals that we had turned down.
The dollar value that got pushed across the table for MKF was just exponential for us, but it was one of those things that it was like, we're not going to go down that avenue and play that game.
Right.
We don't play games, we do our work, and we stick to what we do and we stick behind it, and that's it. The political aspect within this space has definitely put us in certain positions where we've just gone, no, this isn't worth the headache, or the dollar value, and it's time to focus on what we set out to do, right? And that's where we've landed today, and it's a very powerful thing when you actually look back and we look at the journey that we've been through. And like I said before, the duck diving and dodging that we've done through deals, and setting to our morals and standing within it. The amount of times we've, just come build this, we'll give you a bunch of supply and you can just sell it whenever. It's like, well, that's not a whole lot fair. Like, it's just not. We can't do that to people. It's rather you pay me in ETH or stables and we'll have a conversation, right? And yeah, no, like we've busted our butts, and we're getting that name around us, and the ecosystem there is going to help with that. As actually people start to see the underlying code and what it can actually capably do, and the growth that it comes from, and the time, the testing, the making sure that everything is where it needs to be. That way when we click deploy, we don't have to worry about, it's going to break, right? And all of that stuff comes together from the experience and the trying, I'm just gonna call it trying times of beating heads on a wall and a keyboard and breaking keyboards and mice, and just literally curling up into a ball some nights in the corner, losing the mentality piece and trying to piece it all back together.
Because
that's what you gotta do.
A lot of people don't know that we went live with 14 smart contracts. Like September 12th when we deployed, like we had 14 smart contracts. 14 smart contracts in 3 different DApps.
I'll just say on that. I'll say on that, guys. Honestly, I've watched projects launch before, and I've watched the build up to them, and they're absolute shit shows. Stuff goes wrong. It doesn't happen. Everyone's kicking off in the chat. Yet you guys launched, and we were all live on the VC, and you were so relaxed, and it was so smooth, and it just all came together perfectly. It was like there was no stress on your part, and it just worked. But it's like,
well, I mean, some of the things that we were deploying were finished in June. Some of them were finished in July. Some of them were finished in August. Like some of them were finished, 2 weeks beforehand. But there's a couple questions in the chat here that I just wanted to touch on for some folks.
Let me bring some of these. I mean, you can touch on the one about what's it feel like to be so awesome if you want.
It feels amazing.
We're not awesome, but I don't stand. I'm not awesome. I'm just morally driven. That's what I'm going with.
But honestly, what he has said there, and again, it's what the community think. The appreciation there just for how transparent you are and how much trust we have in you, because that's one thing we rarely find in crypto. So we've got a question there from hello, DevGods. Are there any plans in place to improve the score on platforms like DexScore?
Yeah, so
I can take that one, Code, if you want.
You go for it. Okay. Because Brennan spent how long? A month and a half. This is a 6-week smart contract. The average smart contracts build time is probably 6 seconds. I would say the average smart contract is 6 seconds to 6 minutes is the average amount of time that someone actually spends going from some amount of code to deployed code. And ours was a full-blown 6 weeks. And so just as a preface before Brennan takes this, you could imagine what it feels like for us to spend 6 months building something that is an absolute scalable powerhouse in terms of what it can do, for DexScore to say, this one's fucking dumb.
But actually, the easiest way to simplify that into like something people can understand, get into the technical, which I like to do, but the base concept of a lot of this is that there's a standard, right? And that standard is you have a meme coin. It's not scalable. It is strictly built and sustains within its own current smart contract, right? So when we start going outside of that, an inclusion of, a bridge that doesn't actually hold supply, but it changes the evaluation of supply as people mint and burn across tokens, right? So right there, you have a mint function and you have a burn function that can be called externally from the smart contract, and it's not only a one-time call. So what actually happens there is that it'll trigger their little scanner and go, hey, heads up, there's a mint function, there's a burn function. Well, there's like 50 points knocked off because they think it's a scam right out of the gate, right? Without actually understanding the technologies that lay within it. Next thing is the taxation. Now, the one trigger within these scanners that you see is the way that we have it set through mapping of the liquidity pairing event systems that are attached to the smart contract, right? So we actually have the ability to add and remove pairs from the smart contract that gets taxed and communications within it. If not, and it's not a paired token, it'll actually revert the call. So it sees that as a giant, hey, warning. There's a possibility that these things can be changed. And if they do, what'll actually end up happening is you won't be able to trade that token against that pair. Except for the native. We've actually hard-coded the native pairs into it, so you can't actually remove that. So it's always going to be tradable against the native pair of Ethereum or BSC.
The scanners won't recognize that.
Exactly, they won't. The thing is that the scanners are so out of date. Not I'm going to say out of date, but out of scope and scale of what Geeks Ecosystem is. It doesn't know what to think. And the core concept of just even my belief, though, is that as an investor, you shouldn't be relying on somebody else's decided code if something's good or not, because you're just setting yourself up for failure. Look how many times there's projects that are 99 out of 100 that go to zero, right? And it's not because it's anything of the smart contract, it's the people behind it. As long as the code is sound, people can do the malicious on the backside, right? So that's where you have to do your research against the team to actually make that decision yourself, if that makes sense, right? Yeah, I'll kind of throw it back over to Cody. You can touch in on that.
Yeah, well, I just want to answer the question directly, which is that I would love to, but there really isn't any way to do it without asking them to either A, give us like an exemption and write in some special response that if our contracts are scanned, it says something special, which is almost certainly not going to happen. And without that happening, like there really isn't anything else that can be done, And the second thing that I want to add too is that these like scanners, these platforms, these everything else, like their entire goal is to identify risk. That's their goal. They're not there to identify strengths. Like there's no scanner ever that is going to scan our contract code and go, wow, this contract was designed to have customizable liquidity pools across token-to-token pairs, scalable across any blockchain that these guys want to go to. That's really cool. No, it's not going to say that. What it's going to say is this code has the ability to change out the router. This is a security risk. Be careful. That's what's going to happen. And so the contract is going to say, hey, devs have used a mint function to mint tokens and drain the liquidity pool. These guys have a mint function. Be careful, period. They're not going to say, oh, I see that they have a bridge contract that's able to do cross-chain transactions between any EVM in 60 seconds for a 1.5% fee. These guys are really interoperable. You should check them out. Nope, not going to say that. It's going to say there's a mint function here. Mint functions have burned people before. Be careful. And so it's one of the unfortunate things about what we've done is that we are as interoperable as it gets in terms of what a multi-chain token could hope to get to, and the downfall of that is that that's not normal, and the way that it is done isn't compatible with the scanners. So when the Geeks token shows up in a private chat, like what we need is community members who are in these private chats to be able to defend the token, and defend the things, But one of the things that is important to know is that like there is quote unquote risks with the token contract, which is that we can mint supply. Like I have in a browser, I don't use the browser for anything. Like it's just entirely on its own browser, but that's the Relayer wallet. And the Relayer wallet has, ETH in it on Base, and it's got BNB on it on BSC. And that wallet is allowed to call the mint functions. But I keep it on that browser. I don't use it for anything, but the private keys for that are fed into the code that's running in an AWS environment to do the cross-chain transactions. It does it pays for the gas on the other side, and it does the mint on the other side from the code. And so that there is set up that if, Brendan and I had said, hey, let's go and mint a bunch of supply, we could, but we're not going to. And the second thing is that we've got 80% of supply in the deployer wallet. So there's not really much of a point of minting supply when we've got so much tokens in the deployer wallet, because that's there. And, as another note, like when something else that's damaging against the DEX score is that we have 80% of supply in the deployer wallet, which the way that I describe this is that there's our floor is so high with very little volume at the moment because of the raise that we had done beforehand. I sold over $200,000 worth of NFTs prior to launching, which provided us with $100,000 in initial liquidity across the two blockchains. So what that meant was that 5% bonuses to the NFTs plus 5% bonuses to, we did a 50K pre-sale as well. That's only 10% of supply. But none of those tokens were acquired below $1 million. So when you see projects that fair launch at 10K and then they hit $2 million market cap, like they've got people that are in a 10X because the average entry is going to be somewhere around 100, 200K because people were buying, when you do fair launch at 5, 10K, the first 60% of supply is gone before you're even at a $50,000 market cap. So now you've got all of this sell pressure that you're reaching at 500K and then $1 million. And so now we only have 20%. I think right now it's 16% that's circulating. So there's so few tokens that are out there that our sell pressure is incredibly low. Like over the last 3 weeks, the sell pressure that we've been seeing was only mostly from one guy who was the bridge dev that got 1% of supply when we acquired the source code from the bridge. And this guy sold $12,000 worth of tokens. He's 65% out of his position now, which is great before this like next leg comes in. But that was most of the selling volume. Like I think it was 0.0009 down to like 0.00065. It was entirely this one guy. It was an 8-day span. There was only one guy that sold. You know, so our core community here is so strong and so in place, that, like it's almost like we have a community exemption from these typical security risks because our community has been together for so long, and that we've been a part of this and everybody's so bought into the long term on this, which for Kami, like if you want like the most simplified version to explain like how this works to a novice, is that like you're here in DeFi looking to make investments in something that is safe, that like has a high likelihood of increasing in price, that has people that are going to be working on it consistently, and that there's everybody that's bought in for the long term. All of those things would be considered good. And Geeks Ecosystem is that place for everybody and is intending to be that for more and more people as we scale out forward. So our goal is to make DeFi's greatest trading environment, where you can show up and you can say, okay, I want to buy tokens that aren't going to rug. Great. Every token that's paired with Geeks, including Geeks itself, is not going to rug. Well, that's great. All of these things work together to create this really cool environment where there's some burns that are happening. There's some governance tokens, And so our gist is that we have built the platform. We're going to be launching Geeks on ETH in 10 days or in 8 days. So now we have one token that can trade on 3 blockchains, and it's got its own price on all 3 blockchains, which if they ever get a little out of flux, you can actually use the bridge to go and trade them and you can make money. I have a video in the group chat under /arbitrage that shows how I made $300 in 5 minutes, like taking advantage of an arbitrage opportunity. So you can check that out. So this is a little thing that's set up. And so what we do is we then use Geeks to then launch new tokens and launch them with the blockchain. So now there's different price points on the blockchain and cross-chain. So once we launch Geeks, we're going to do one of the first triple chain launches, where we're going to launch a new token that's going to have a different price on 3 different blockchains from the native pair and from Geeks. So now you've got 6 different prices for one token, and you've got the ability to go between any of the chains within a minute. Then we go even crazier, and we take the Geeks token and the new token and pair it with a third one. And then now all of a sudden you've got 3 different price points on a blockchain. And then there's 3 blockchains. So now you've got 9 prices for the next one. And then we use that for voting. And then every new token that comes in after that, we'll actually create 9 liquidity pools for it. We'll do this really cool triple chain launch. We'll have votes that come in where we say, okay, here's a project proposal. Here's a pitch. Here's, a dozen, 2 dozen, however many come in. We as a community decide what we want to launch. Brennan and I offer them a month's worth of development support to help them get started for whatever else they might need. They've got some cool utility that they want to get started. We've got the ability to give advice to things. So you can think of it as this little miniature incubator that helps get projects started. And then we have these really cool launches where people are able to buy with our tokens, be able to buy with the blockchain things. They can do the bridging across chains, and that all of it's safe. And then optimally, what we're looking for is to have Geeks Ecosystem function as a multi-chain blockchain. Like that's kind of the crazy way of thinking about it, is that instead of launching a token on ETH, you're actually launching a token on Geeks Ecosystem, which means that it's launching on Geeks and on Base and on BSC at the same time. Now you get access to all 3 of those networks. You've got prices on all 3 blockchains, so you've got more trading volume that's going to be happening as people are waiting to see what's, the prices are happening in between them all. And then what we have is our own rating tool, our own shill team that we have internally. We have our own passive investments that we have in the form of the NFTs that come from it. We have our own launch tool that we're going to have built. We're going to have developer tools in the form of token lockers and airdropper and the rest. And Brennan and I will build those live on a voice call sometime just to show you guys how much more, what's the word here? I think
how many more keyboards we can break.
How it feels to be so awesome. To show you guys how awesome, that was the one. How does it feel to be so awesome? To just sit down and be like, today we're going to build an airdropper and have a fully functional D app, in a single working session. We're going to have a token locker. Here's a fully functional token locker in a single working session. So then when you look around and you see these other devs, that's one of the things that I think is going to be really fun when we do these types of things, is to just show that when we say that we're working behind the scenes, it gives you a good frame of reference of when we can show up and in 4 hours have a fully functional airdropper. And then you look at another team that's working on some kind of utility, and it's like, wait a minute, they've been working on that utility for 3 weeks. I watched 2 guys build a fully functional D app in 3 hours. How much work's going on here? what, and so that you'll actually start to develop a bit of a frame around what is the work and how much work things take. Because right now, our main work is on the communications front, So I recently sent 35 pages of content, 3,500 words over to Brennan, and I'm like, hey, put this into the website you already have formatted. Let's get it set up so people can understand what this is better. But yeah, so that was just me trying to answer some of those questions there.
We'll fire another question into you then. Seeing as you've just brought it up, I'll bang it up on the screen. When website?
Never. Probably next, I don't know. Code, what are we thinking? Probably roughly by the time we get all the rest of the stuff I sent over to you, or I got to send over to you yet, and then get that back and pumped in within a week, I would think. I would say before launch. I'm going to say launch. Yeah, because that was what we aimed for.
Launch?
I was kind of looking at Sunday, Monday, 20th, 21st.
You've got
everything there now. I've got the last of the The hardest part to explain is is having it in a format that lets people know that Geeks Ecosystem is not a single token. That, for some reason, I don't know what it is. I guess it's just that like DeFi investors are one project, one token. I show up, what's the token?
Yeah.
There's a second token. Why the fuck do we need a second token? There's this mentality of like, if there is a second token, you're a farmer dev. Like if there is something else that that it's bad for some reason. And so having it set up in a way that lets people know that, like, the easy way to put it is that imagine that we got pissed at ETH for having multiple tokens on it. We got pissed at Sol for having multiple tokens on it. Like that would be ridiculous. Like you would never.
Everyone gets pissed at Sol.
But this is the idea, right? Is that like it is an exclusive launch pad, basically. Like it is like it's the antithesis to pump fun. Like Brennan and I believe that just because everybody can launch a project, that not everybody fucking should. Like some people should have their idea vetted and say, you know what, that's a really, really bad idea. That should not become a token. That will
Dude,
be
these pump funds and everything else that's literally causing more damage than good in this space. You know that. We've had that conversation. You know my standpoint on those things. And yeah, you're right. Not everybody should launch a token. It's just one of those things.
Right. And so our thing as well is that like because we have so many of our utilities already built, and that we can, pump them out in a way that we can, that like us being able to offer development support to projects that are coming in, means that like folks can draft like cool ideas, and then come in and then we say, okay, like these guys are Web3 experts. Like let's have some cool things that are done, on chain Web3 setup, and then have it work together with the rest of the ecosystem. And this is something that people won't understand until probably after the DeFi launch, when we have 3 different tokens that are live and we've got one token that's paired with 2 other tokens on 3 different blockchains. And there's some buy transactions that come through and you go and look at a transaction hash that's probably 15 items long. And you're like, wait a minute, I bought DeFi with ETH. Why did it swing over to Fire and then swap Fire for Geeks and then swap Fire into this thing, and then there's money going here and money going there? Like it's not until that's going to happen that people will understand that that tree that's behind Alpha here is how it's going to work, that it truly is this shared liquidity network, that one project or one token within the ecosystem can't go to zero without the whole thing getting wrecked. So everything that gets plugged into it actually is now like protected by like the whole liquidity network that is within the environment. And that therefore, like when the projects are pitching to come and launch, that we're going to want things that are coming in that are pro Geeks Ecosystem, that are further setting us up as this trading environment, that are setting us up as being the go-to platform for developers and DeFi education and developer tools and these kinds of things, that'll fortify us in that space of kind of a leader in the same way that like Unicrypt and Team Finance and these other guys are set up as kind of sources of software and kind of that kind of a thing. That's one of the things that would be really cool. But even more like culture stuff, like I don't know, who knows what's going to happen. That's what's really exciting for us, is that we have this platform that
I think I guess the tricky thing now is we know what's been created. We can see what you guys are like, and we can see what's been built. It's getting a wider audience now to see it too, and that's where a lot of us lot come in. And that whole marketing strategy type side of things is another thing that a lot of people don't realize is tough. It's there's equally as many. We talk about scammers in this space that try to rip people off with cryptocurrencies, but unfortunately, the flip side is there's also a multitude of people out there that are scamming in relation to just try to take your money promising you stuff that they can't deliver on when it comes to marketing. So that's a whole nother part of building out something like this that has to be taken into account. And there's so much work goes on in the background in relation to that people don't realize as well. So yeah, that's tough, and it's just another thing that you've got to think about, I imagine.
Yeah. Marketing is an interesting one, because there's, like the more that I do this, and the more time that I speak with marketers, I find it hilarious when I get a $50,000 marketing proposal that's sent to me in the form of a Telegram message. That's like item 1,
Wrap a Lamborghini.
Yeah. Item 2, Amsterdam plane. Item, well, what plane? Like, what is going on the plane? Like, where is it? How is this being set up? Item number 3, 12 USA YouTubers. Item number 4, TG callers. Which one? Sorry, I'm busy right now. Let me get back to you later. Like, you're so, like, you're firing around $50,000 proposals, and you don't even have just a list on hand of like who you've got. And it's a lot of work. Like I remember I got one $50,000. It was a $45,000 proposal that came in with another project. It took 4 days to get me this proposal. Came in the form of a Telegram message, and it had another project name at the top. Bunch of things, different number than what I gave them a budget for. And it comes in and then immediately deleted, name swapped back out at the top, and then resubmitted. I was like, this is, that marketing, like that's right. Like that was kind of the thing. So like most of what we really want, and the thing that I've found the most success with, keep in mind that we're a 2 million fully diluted value token that has $140,000 in native liquidity and no significant external support. Like we have Baba, Terpy, Papa, DeFi Dojo, and Eden, which is kind of just 5 friends that I've made along the way, with Brendan. There's been no major, anything, and so it's pretty much entirely the network that Brendan and I have built, over the last 2 years that has led to where we're at now. And so as we get into these next setups here, it's really just finding people that we can get on board that want to know about it. Like when I recently got a list of 634 KOLs that, community outreach, there's like 70 folks, send a message out to folks, and they're like, hey, like one supply deal. I'm like, you don't even know what the plan is next week. Like, you know nothing about this. Like you've got no source of community that you can prove that you have, influence over. Like you've got nothing, in terms of like what the long-term plans are. Like you get these folks, like I watch some folks that have 800,000 followers and they do a call on a project at a $2 million market cap and there's no volume that comes in. I'm like, okay, well, I'm not going to give you $20,000 worth of tokens and $5,000 in ETH for you to, even if the chart does a 2x, like now we're fighting off $40,000 worth of sell pressure after a 2x, so I'm like very frugal with these like supply deals on like who's getting a part of things, and it's like, these are the kind of things that when folks are like, what's happening, like Dev's been quiet, Dev's working, Dev's sussing out bullshit.
Yeah, there's so much more goes on in the background, like you said.
Like our community, and I love it because our community is so strong, and has a, faith and belief that, and knows that like Brennan and I are on this every single day. And it's just that we're at that point now that there is now a point where we can have retractory moves, where we can do something with the expectation of making things better and result in making things worse by making wrong moves. Yeah. And so part of what we have gotten to right now is that like we are in a position that we have resources to make moves, and that the one right move, will actually be better than 8 right moves and 2 wrong moves, if that makes sense.
Yeah, completely.
The biggest thing is having these no bad moves.
I just thought I'd quickly, seeing as our chief graphic designer's decided to finally pop into the chat, even though we've been on for an hour and 20 minutes now, might as well give him a shout out.
Oh man, this man's a miracle worker. Like, Brennan, how nice has it been building the website when you've got this kind of content coming over to you on drip?
Been a lot easier, that's for sure. Yeah, no, it's been pretty sweet. Haven't had much time to actually sit and chat with Mikey recently, but it's nice to see you, dude. Haven't talked to you in a while. Hope everything's going well.
Yeah, like I said, let's not make his head too big. I speak to Mikey quite a lot, and no, but honestly, credit to the guy. He's very good at what he does, and it's great to see all of his content out there all over X and Twitter. So, for anybody that's tuned in that doesn't follow Mikey, make sure you do on X. You'll see his content all over the place, and it's only fair that I also give a shout out to another one of my fellow UK brothers, shall we say, because we've all sort of like formed a little bit of a bromance ourselves in our little splinter group. There's about 5 of us. John's in the chat as well, I see, and John is the main guy that you'll probably see all over Twitter or X or whatever you call it, shilling like crazy about the project. And it's just a testament to how many of us have been around for as long as we have, and we are so bullish on this, and we're willing to put up our own. Like I said, we're not part of the team. We are just community members that are putting a lot of hours in ourselves to actually get the word out there best we can and show support to the devs, because when we do see people go, it's quiet in here, or that means devs cooking, it is true. They are busy. They've got a lot to do in the background. And that's when us as the community come forward and we have to try and take up the slack so they can do what they need to do. So I appreciate everybody that does that, and I'll try and do as much as I can. We're all still running day jobs at the same time. So this is fitting in and around our real life, and maybe one day we'll be able to retire and just do this stuff full time and have that yacht party in Marbella that I keep banging on about.
But yeah, one of the things that's exciting, just touching on Mikey's thing there, is you got a software upgrade today. So he already sent me some of the things that I got from there. So we flipped some funds over from the treasury to scoop this up for him. So he's got some new tricks in the hat that weren't possible before. Some days, man, like I see that message there of haven't done my real job for weeks. It's hilarious. We'll get this.
Yeah,
Mikey, here's a project brief. Here's a project brief. We need these images. Here's a reasonable timeline. I know you've got a full-time job, so like here's some timeline in like 4 days, and the man's just obsessed. He's just like, okay, here's my next 7 hours is all in on this thing. Like
yeah. I put his comment on screen just in case his boss is watching.
Yeah. Yeah, the hats off to John's also merited as well. I think we've got the Shilitary group that's pushing up on 500 total tweets now, and I do think that somewhere's between 30-ish% of all of the tweets that this 86-person raid army has done has been generated from one man. And like, this man's just like everywhere, and it pushes me to keep having to suss out these folks for, who's going to be on board. And we get some folks and he's like, man, I got a new guy with, 500,000 followers. And I'm like, holy shit, like the potential here, the potential here of, when one of these guys is like the man, and get them pulled in and, really get just really get these kind of relationships built with these folks, as we're coming into the next leg. So I got to say, John, forever thanks to, just all the support over the last really like 18, 20 months, as for how we've been getting this whole thing together. He's been a staple pillar in the community for that amount of time.
It's good. Honestly, I'm so bullish for it, and I'm just so grateful for, like you say, the main things, the trust, the transparency that you guys have come forth with. We just want everybody else to see that, because unfortunately a lot of people, they look at the wrong things, and if they actually took the time to come into the TG, see that the devs come into the TG, watch videos like this, get a bit of background, that's where trust comes from. And I'm hoping that that's what this is going to achieve. I know we haven't had a massive amount of viewers in it live. We've been floating at around about 10 people constantly that we've been on. But this is recorded. It's going to go out there. John and the guys are going to start doing their thing. We'll post the link out. People can watch it back. And we can start promoting it. And then hopefully, if you guys are interested, we can have... This was more of a touch base, get to know the devs for people who didn't. A bit of a backstory. I think we've covered that quite well. Going forward, we're open to suggestions from the community, or we'll come up with our own topics. We maybe jump on regular live streams, whether it's every couple of weeks or something like that. And we'll select different topics if people are interested in that, cover different sections of the white paper. I'd be certainly interested in doing it. I want to do more. I'm wanting to get into this world of streaming and see if we can make some contacts in it as well, possibly get invited on some other channels. So if anybody at any point is watching any of this who can suggest other YouTubers out there or anything like that that they think might be approachable for us to go and see, and see if they want to invite us on the channel, we'd be keen to do that.
Yeah, I'd love to hear from folks in the chat also, like what people want to see from these streams. Like what is the kind of conversations, what is the kind of content, what's the for me that's one of the biggest things I'd like to know, because this is for you guys, again, this is for our audience who doesn't even know about us yet, so anything that you guys have in mind for kind of the next steps, like please do share that. Any little like voice in the back of your head, like, oh, I'd really like to know more, and keep in mind too that it doesn't need to even be ecosystem specific. Like Brennan and I are like proper Web3, developers, so that it can be anything that you'd like to see or know in DeFi or anything related.
Yeah, sounds good. I'll stick some, like you say, whilst we hopefully build on these streams and get more viewers over here. At the moment, we know that our biggest reach is probably going to be our Telegram groups and that. So I'll stick I love a good poll. So I'll stick a poll in the chat, and we'll get people to start coming up with suggestions and comments in there. And we'll start maybe planning out some future streams and things like that. If we think that we're probably going to get towards wrapping things up now, we're probably going on about an hour and a half. And obviously I'm in the UK, so we're heading towards sort of like 10:30 at night now. And I've told the rest of the household here that they have to be quiet whilst I'm doing this. So I think everyone will probably be asleep. But if anybody's got any final questions, comments, or anything like that, just whilst we wrap things up, stick them in the comments. We maybe field a few more questions. If not, then we can start drawing it to a close. So is there any sort of like final words or anything that you want to say before we sort of like wrap things up, just whilst we wait and see if any more comments come in?
Anything from you, Brennan?
No, man. No, this was good. I quite enjoyed it.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I appreciate you taking your time out and coming on, because obviously you guys, I know how crazy busy you are, and you do have to take time out from what you're doing to come and do these things. So yeah, appreciate it, and thanks for coming on, Brennan, and we'll definitely speak to you again. Maybe some more technical stuff another time. So people enjoy listening to the technical stuff, even if they don't understand it. I know I do. What about you, Cody? Anything at all?
I talk too much.
Yeah, I mean, it's debatable, but...
Sorry.
Says the man who's heard me talk as much as the community thinks I talk. I talk to Brennan more than anyone else, really. So the amount of times that he's just heard. Oh, what did I say? The amount of times he's just heard me on a 2-hour rant just to try and organize my thoughts, and then at the end of it, him just be like, "Hey, man, like, I think we should." Brilliant! You're brilliant, man. You're brilliant. Great idea.
Mr. Brightside wants to know when YouTube avatars are, as he said, moving ones.
Good question.
Yeah.
Good question.
Maybe we can
Mikey? Question mark?
I'll ask you a question, Cody. I'll go with this one. Any thoughts on whether you'll appear on these YouTube streams actually as yourself, and if so, would it be at a certain sort of like target? Are we going to like rally the community to say, if we get this to a certain point, we get to meet Cody live and in person?
That's a great question. That is a great question. So historically, I haven't had any kind of plans around like face doxing on the calls. And just because it's the anonymous space, and a lot of what we do kind of is in line with these principles of DeFi and Web3, But if the community had rallied together and decided that it was something that they had wanted to share, and I'm still chef or geeks, and just like hopped on, with a video call, and like I'm not out here, just like straight doxing just to try and make the chart go up, but that it was something that the community they felt would rally behind, and then they wanted to see me here with a chef hat on and some chef whites, and holding something just for vibes. Like it'd be something that I would be interested in hearing. I did have a call with you recently where we had hopped on the video call with just the two of us for a little bit, so seen my mug. So it's something that we could definitely chat about. There's no current milestone I would say that I've got in mind.
Sounds good. So maybe one day 100 mil market cap unicorn onesie. That's what I'm thinking.
Took the words right out of my mouth.
My wife has one. She's got a unicorn onesie.
Perfect. Right. Honestly, guys, I think that's probably about it. So thanks again for taking your time out and coming on. I hope the community that has joined has found it useful. I'll be around in the Telegram chats and things like that. So feel free to ask me any questions and stuff. Like I said, I'm happy to be facial doxing because I'm just a community member. So I can understand why the guys are doing it the way they're doing it, and total respect to them for that. I'll keep pushing forward, doing more of this if it's what people want to see. And we'll go from there. So adios. We're going to shut the stream down. I'll quickly sort of like chat to you guys just for a couple of minutes back in the green room when I end this stream now. And thanks a lot for the people that did tune in and for the people that are watching it in the future. I hope you find it useful. Speak to you again soon.
Cheers, man. Talk soon.
See you. Talk soon. Thanks.